A tornado is on a collision course with a daycare center.
So it's just like a big, loud whoosh.
Watch Storm Stories on the Weather Channel. Tomorrow at 8 Eastern and Pacific.
Comcast connects you to the best of entertainment, like this.
AMC's Monster Fest presents 6 terrifying nights that will make you come face to face with all your horror favorites. And the world television premiere of Piñata Survival Island. AMC's Monster Fest, October 26th through October 31st. Only on AMC.
The best in entertainment. Comcast.
Unsafe living conditions, out-of-date medications, inadequate nutrition, unreasonable restraint. Freeholder Brian Hughes uncovered neglect at the County Geriatric Center, fought to improve patient care, and worked for new senior centers throughout the county. As county executive, he'll increase oversight and hold management accountable. Democrat Brian Hughes for county executive. He'll never stop fighting for us.
Well, it's been done. Tropical Storm Nicholas. That's right. Our 14th storm of the season so far. Take a look at the track so far we've had this year. Starting with Anna, we went through Bill, Claudette, made our way through Isabel, Larry, Mindy recently, and now we are missing a check mark right next to Nicholas, but I bet you next time we see this, we'll see that check mark. That's only because we just recently got the information at 11 o'clock Eastern Time as to the update of this storm. Now, back over the last 100 years or so, you start to see less storms developing the further east you go around the Atlantic Basin. But that's not the case this time. In fact, this time, we are going far east enough to see something develop. And this here is our tropical storm, Nicholas. Pretty much the only thing you really see that stands out of any organization here across the Atlantic Basin. It's moving right now to the west-northwest at 10 miles per hour. There's winds up to 40 miles per hour, but it is far away from land. 1,120 miles exactly far away from land, and that land is the Windward Islands. We're not too concerned right now in the near future. It's certainly something to bear watching nonetheless, but we are expecting this for right now to be more of a marine hazard than anything else. Let's take a closer look at this. You can see there's quite a bit of convection associated with this here, but there's also strong winds. You can see those winds here across the northeast area just flaring out. So we'll keep an eye and see what happens with this system, whether it intensifies or it stays a tropical storm over the next 12 to 24 hours. We'll let you know as the information comes down. A little closer to home, boy, I'll tell you, it has been very quiet for the Caribbean areas, but now we're beginning to see a few showers developing, and there is an area of low pressure right around the central areas of Mexico. We're dealing with some stormy weather, some squally weather, you could say, and that's going to continue to occur as we head through the next 12 to 24 hours, right around Belize and even in towards Panama. We could be dealing with heavy showers for the next, say, 24 to 36 hours at best. But overall, the Gulf of Mexico, as well as the Pacific, very, very quiet. That's a quick look at your tropical update. Now let's take a look at the stormy weather. Boy, what a night it has been here. A 55-mile-per-hour wind gust just reported out of Philadelphia. All because of this line right here. Storms made its way across, now making its way in towards New Jersey, where we've had some severe thunderstorm warnings in effect. This is going to be a night that will probably keep you up. If it's not by the heavy rain, could be by the howling of the winds. Winds have been gusting up to 40 miles per hour. In general, it's been 20 to 30. But tomorrow is the big story. We are talking about an area of low pressure that will be intensifying over the next 12 to 24 hours. And I'll tell you, there are numerous wind advisories here across the Northeast. We'll give you all the details coming up after your local on the 8s. We'll be back.
It's easy to access weather.com on America Online. Just enter keyword weather or point and click.
6 other seasons on record that have been as active as this. Now, we do have a couple of areas we're watching here in the Caribbean. And also here, we have Tropical Storm Nicholas. This is number 14, folks. And right now, the location is 1,065 miles east of the Windward Islands. That's from the center. The winds are about 50 miles per hour, moving west-northwest at 10 miles per hour. Now, the pressure is at 1,000 millibars, that's estimated. And if this does get closer to some land, then maybe the hurricane hunters will get out there and investigate. But right now, it is just estimated. Let's show you what it looks like on the infrared satellite picture. Large area convection here. Still experiencing a little bit of southwest shear, but not as much. And it is forecast, the Hurricane Center is forecasting it to become a hurricane tomorrow. So we'll have to keep a close eye on this. Right now, the forecast track is up towards the west-northwest and maybe recurving. But again, it's too soon to call that. So folks in the Windward Islands, the Leeward Islands, and even into the Bahamas, this is something we need to watch over the next couple of days. In the Caribbean, well, especially here in the Western Caribbean, about 1,008 millibar low here. Very weak. Still some convection here, an area to watch. But if something would develop, it would be slow to develop. So we've got plenty of time to watch this, too. But a lot of rain in Costa Rica, Nicaragua, some flooding problems here. That's the biggest concern right now. Eastern Pacific, two areas, two very small areas, two lows. We have one right here and then one off to the west of that one. As far as development, slow to develop, something to keep an eye on. But otherwise, especially here along the Mexican coast, it is very quiet. Enjoy the cruise. Nick?
Utility firms are feeling the aftermath of Hurricane Isabel in their profit and loss columns. Linda Bell has details in the Bloomberg Money Barometer.
Good morning. The list of companies saying their earnings have been hurt by Hurricane Isabel is growing. Dominion Resources said the cost of restoring power service to customers after the hurricane will cut its third and fourth quarter profit by about $128 million. The owner of Virginia's largest utility said it won't seek an increase in Virginia or North Carolina-based rates to cover the costs. Last week, the company reached a tentative agreement with Virginia officials to raise residential rates by 3.4% to cover higher fuel costs last winter. Meanwhile, Hartford Financial Services said its third quarter profit missed forecast because of losses from Hurricane Isabel as well as legal costs. The biggest U.S. seller of variable annuities said individuals said claims from Hurricane Isabel cost about $26 million. As a result, its net income came in between $1.15 and $1.18 a share. The average estimate of analysts surveyed by Thomson Financial was $1.29. For the Weather Channel, I'm Linda Bell with the Bloomberg Money Barometer.
Well, does a wet and windy Wednesday have you thinking about the weekend?
Really wet and windy. Yeah. We'll sneak a peek at your getaway forecast as First Outlook continues. Stay with us.
Is it a marvel of engineering?
Howard, it's time for your tropical update, and we now have our 14th tropical storm of the Atlantic season. That's Nicholas. Let's start first of all with a little bit of what we call climatology, meaning that let's look at the average season and see what we should expect. Well, as we head through October, as obviously we're doing now, we see a sharp drop-off the next week or two. So sort of usually the last hurrah here is in October for these tropical systems, and they really start to drop. Where do we usually look? Well, over the past over 100 years, there were 80 storms that formed in the middle 10 days of October, scattered across the Bahamas to the east of the islands, but really a cluster back over toward the western Caribbean Sea. So that's one area that we usually watch a little bit more closely. What's going on? Well, there's Nicholas right there. That's Nicholas. This little feature here, that's what's left of Mindy, or maybe actually a little bit farther south. It was south of Bermuda and sort of got entrained right into that system that's now moving up to the west of the Azores. Tropical Storm Nicholas, as of 11 a.m. Atlantic Standard Time, was centered a little over 1,000 miles east of the Windward Islands. Top sustained winds at 50. Pressure is estimated. There's an overconnaissance aircraft that travel 1,000 miles east of the islands to investigate. So by studying the satellite photographs, that's where the estimates come from. This system is moving west-northwest at about 8 miles per hour. Satellite imagery here. We're looking at a little bit of a bursting pattern. You see that big burst of color there. Then it sort of dies down. Then it's maybe trying to burst up a little bit again. Very typical to see that. Several different things going on. You can see the way the high cirrus clouds are fanning out. That's telling us that we have an anticyclone or high over the area, which is favorable for strengthening. But at the same time, just barely off to the west, you can see some of these winds also blowing out of the south. So there may be some shear farther to the west, which would inhibit the strengthening. But overall, we think there will be somewhat favorable environment. Look right now, though, you can see that bursting pattern that I showed you, the core of the convection, sort of close to the center circulation or on the east side, very similar to yesterday. Center right here, certainly the western semicircle is exposed, so there is definitely some shearing going on. And if you look very closely, you can see some of those filaments of the cirrus clouds still blowing off the area. So yes, there is an anticyclone, but some of that shearing also working against it. Now this picture here is going to help us out. It may look a little wild here, but let's get our bearings. You can see the U.S. and little ways out to sea, way down here, that's Nicholas. Why do we want to look at this? This is our water vapor imagery. Shows the flow patterns aloft very closely. You can see a swirling motion here, an upper air low pressure center. And when you have that sort of feature, this low pressure center actually continues all the way back over toward eastern side of the island. You get those southerly winds, low pressure center, that counterclockwise flow, southerly winds. So that's what's allowing the shear to take place. What we think is as this low starts to move away, the ridge may build a little bit. So we're expecting it, first of all, maybe a little turn to the north, and then maybe more of a gradually back to the western pattern here. But it's still a long ways away and plenty of time to watch it. Over toward the Caribbean Sea and the Gulf of Mexico, actually looking pretty good. Yesterday we were sort of concerned about an area toward the western Caribbean. Well, I would say most of that tropical wave appears to be heading across Central America. If there's any development, that's probably where it's going to be, on the other side. Visible satellite photograph continues to show some of these showers. Over to the Bay Islands, occasional showers. Nothing is organized at this point. Here's our picture of the islands also. Windward, Leeward Islands looking like a fine day. We do have a few showers off to the east of Guadalupe and Dominica, so you may see an increase and a few showers coming up. Coast of Mexico looking fine, and heading over to the western Pacific, showers and a few thunderstorms east of the Philippines. Over to Guam, nothing imminent either. Back here in the States, we have a very windy storm system in the northeastern United States. We also have some rain coming into the northwest. For you in the northeast, some of these winds will be gusting over 40 miles per hour today. Back over toward Hagerstown, Maryland, last hour, gust to 52. Some gusty winds in Philadelphia. And of course, for the ball game, Yankees, Red Sox, also looking very windy. Next here at the Weather Channel, we'll have a look at your forecast for this Wednesday afternoon. Plus, we'll have the details on some windy weather in New York in just a moment. Stay with us. Your local on the 8s are coming up.
Powdered donuts, glazed. Expect a chance of rain Friday through Sunday, with temperatures in the 60s on Friday.
Welcome back to PM Edition. It's 10 minutes before the hour, and that means it's time for your tropical update. So let's check in with our hurricane expert, Dr. Steve Lyons. And Dr. Steve, you have a little bit of a look back in history for this date.
Oh, that's right, Christina. It was on this date. Hurricane Hazel, a Category 4 hurricane, made landfall along the Carolina coastline. Let's look at what actually happened there. Category 4 hurricane near Sunset Beach in North Carolina. North Carolina was the most impacted by this particular hurricane. 175 people died from it. As a matter of fact, we can add one to it because the lead forecaster, what we now call the National Hurricane Center, actually had a stroke and died while tracking this very, very dangerous hurricane. In fact, the tide levels were about 18 feet above normal tides. Ocean Island, Holden Beach, Long Beach, Southport, nearly every home along the coast is either severely damaged or destroyed. The first row of houses at Wrightsville Beach was completely eliminated. That was a very devastating hurricane, and actually the strongest late season hurricane we've seen on record. Well, today we have a tropical storm in the Atlantic, but it's no comparison to Hazel, thank goodness, and it's far away from land, as you can see, 1,010 miles east of the Windward Islands, winds 50 miles per hour, moving west-northwest at 8 miles per hour. Let's look at it on the satellite imagery, and it continues to pulse and wane and wax back and forth. The circulation center remains slightly to the west of the main core of thunderstorms, but getting a little bit better organized over the last 24 hours, and it continues to move to the west-northwest. Now, what do we think is going to happen to the system? Well, if it were to weaken rather dramatically, it'll take this more southern track. If it strengthens more quickly, it'll take the more northern track. In between is our best estimate, and out here about 48 to 72 hours, we're expecting to possibly reach hurricane strength as long as the upper level shear doesn't get it. But you can see the Windward Leeward Islands way over here. So right now, only a marine threat. As we go down to the Lesser Antilles and up toward Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, beautiful weather there today. A few showers over the larger islands, as we typically expect from heating. Some disturbed weather over here in the southwestern Caribbean. We've been monitoring that. The low pressure associated with it appears now to be in the eastern Pacific, moving slowly into the eastern Pacific, but showers remain there. And up to the north, you can see this frontal boundary moving into the Bahamas off the U.S. East Coast, basically a barrier for any tropical development and tropical impacts to the United States over the next 3 or 4 days. We'll keep an eye on this area, though, even though the low pressure is moving into the eastern Pacific. That's a favored area this time of year for tropical development. And speaking of the eastern Pacific, a couple of weak little low pressure centers here. One there, a tiny one here, just about gone, and then the low pressure center moving off the Central American coast are three features we're watching. Only the one farthest to the south is affecting the coastline right now with some showers. Enjoy your Mexican Riviera cruise. Christina?
All right, Dr. Steve Lyons, thanks for the update. We'll check back in with you in about an hour. But for now, let's take a look at what's going on a little closer to home. And we do see some wet weather and windy conditions with this intense area of low pressure in the northeast. It has been quite a wind maker. We've had winds gusting 40, 50, 60, even 70 miles per hour with this low. You can see the isobars, the lines of equal pressure. When we see them close together like that, tightly packed isobars, we know that we're dealing with some windy conditions. And indeed we are, as this low has strengthened, and it's caused a lot of trouble for folks here in the northeast. In Maine, we've had reports of up to 100,000 people without power. The governor there has declared a state of emergency. And again, you can see we're dealing with a little bit of wet weather here too, also some wet weather in the northwest. But here's the rain affecting you in northern New York, a few scattered showers in New England. It's really the wind that's been the big problem, though. We're still seeing winds gusting 30 and 40 miles per hour. And that's true also, again, all the way down toward the mid-Atlantic states where you're seeing those windy conditions. And in some parts of Maine, we've had wind gusts up to 60 miles per hour. It's just been a bit of a rough day for you here in the northeast. And in the northwest, what we have seen is some wet weather around, and we're still seeing some of those soggy conditions for you here in the northwest. As a matter of fact, in parts of western Washington, we actually have some flood watches that are in effect in the western part of the state.
And there's much more to come on the second hour of PM Edition. We'll take a look ahead to your weekend and beyond in the Weekly Planner.
Stay with us. We'll be back after your local on the 8.
Time for you tonight on an all-new